So I will start now. Happy Earth Day to everybody. I'm wearing green to celebrate, even though we might not feel like celebrating, given the current circumstances. So let's dive into our first webinar. In the midst of this crisis, when currently all we can think about and talk about is how to get out of this lockdown, how to flatten the infection curve, how to revive our economies, there is another looming issue that has not gone away, which is climate change. As Christina Figueres pointed out the other day in Time magazine, and she is one of the key architects of the Paris Climate Agreement, climate itself and nature will remind us that global warming is not going to go away, because we're going to have the same amount of heavy rainfalls, if not more, and wildfires. Let's just remember what happened in Australia only a few months ago. Here in Germany, where I'm sitting, we've got the biggest drought that we've had in years. 2 dry summers followed by a very dry winter, and farmers are already terribly worried about their crops. Foresters are worried about wildfires, and it's only just April. So we do need to continue to act despite COVID-19, or even because of COVID-19, even more, because this crisis has shown us that together we can act as a global community to address important issues. And to my mind, the hospitality and tourism industry is better placed than most, because we are a truly global community. We have always been acting globally. So therefore, I think we can do a lot to further dialogue and build bridges. In order to do that, we do need to speak the same language, which is why we've decided to bust all of those jargons that are quite complicated. We want you to help you to speak this language right in order to address these issues. This is a very simplified version of our Jargon Buster. It skims on the surface of a lot of these issues. We've got a more detailed one, and if you're interested in receiving that, please just let us know. So let's dive in. What are we talking about? Well, sustainability, as we know in ecological terms, it's the property of a biological system to remain diverse and productive indefinitely. And that's where the important thing is. It's got to be circular. You've got to be able to come back to replenishing the system and not exploiting it so it can't replenish itself. Sustainable hospitality needs to function according to those principles, obviously. It has been known to overuse natural resources, so we need to slide into this circular economy thinking also when it comes to hospitality. Where do we live? Ecosystems. So ecosystems are the key thing to understanding that all ecosystems, be it in the waters, sweet water, salty water, all the earth systems are linked with each other. And what we have to understand is that whatever action we take, it will have repercussions on the rest of the system and on other systems. So let me give you an example. For example, we want to address the issue of one of the insects affecting our crops. So we start using pesticides. Then therefore the pesticides kills off the insects. Then suddenly the birds are left with no food. So then the birds are starting to die out because they have nothing to feed on. Therefore, we don't have the birds that help carry around seeds for plants to grow better and trees to grow better. That then affects the biodiversity and the trees. Without trees, we don't have CO2 absorption because they're a carbon sink. Without that, we don't have soil security because they secure through their roots the earth. We have more runoffs, etc., etc. And all of this because we just wanted to kill off one insect. So we need to be aware of all the effects of what we do, and that every little thing we do has an effect. Therefore, I wanted to mention the ecosystems. What to avoid? Now, greenwashing is obviously the one big no-no, and I think especially in this time now, and this is really a positive development for climate change, politicians are starting to go back to appreciating the facts that scientists are coming up with. They have to rely on these facts for COVID, and they're going to have to rely on these facts for climate change. And this is a really great new development, that politicians are working closer with scientists again, and this whole thing about fake news is going to go away, because otherwise you endanger your population. So greenwashing is thankfully on its way out, and what we should be aiming for is transparency, especially in these times. People want facts, they want figures, and they want to be able to trust the companies or the destinations or the hotels they're going to be staying in, because trust is the only thing that will bring travelers back to us. So let's work on that. Let's be open about where we are in our processes, even if we've only just started, talk about it. That is the key thing that we always go on about. So what are the basics? CSR used to be the sort of expression for corporate social responsibility, sustainability being lived within companies, the ethical business approach. That's what started it in the 90s when Kofi Annan started UN Global Compact as well, and the Millennium Goals for the UN. It's moved on slightly now. ESG is the main word that everybody seems to be using, especially in the financial markets. So investors are looking for ESG investments. Governance being here the issue that companies then get beholden to, how they run their companies, how they do things like policies, anti-bribery, are they transparent, what I just mentioned. And then here we have all the environmental factors, and obviously the social issues. How do we look after our staff as well, and in our supply chains, fair pay, etc. So ESG is the word to look out for. Where do we start as a company if we want to start integrating sustainability? We always recommend to have an environmental management system, because it effectively, it acts like your scaffolding of a house when you're building a house. It allows you to put the policies together that you then going to slowly start to go into the planning of how I'm going to roll them out, how I'm going to implement them. You then go back and check, what have I done on these? What are my shortfalls? Where can I improve? You review it with the management, and then you go back and update your policies. And that is a circular activity that helps you ensure that you're progressing. Carbon emissions are obviously the big word that everybody's talking about. We just wanted to come back to these to make sure that everybody understands. Greenhouse gas emissions, obviously greenhouse, as you all know, when you're going into a greenhouse, it's stuffy, it's hot, right? Because the air doesn't circulate. So what we're doing at the moment is we're pumping all these different gases into the atmosphere, and they can't escape. So they come back to the earth and they're heating it all up again. So the most common ones here are the carbon dioxide, which is obviously fossil fuels from cars and planes, and also obviously from energy creation, industry, buildings, which affects a hotel. So you can be energy efficient and reduce those CO2 emissions from your buildings. Methane is mainly meat, as we know, or agriculture and cattle. So again, as a hotel, look at your supply chains, look at where your meat is coming from, and how that meat has also, have they been feeding it. Nitrous oxide, the same, it's back to agriculture. Again, for hotels, important to know who the producers are of their agricultural products and how they're working to reduce that. Water vapor, again, we've got a lot of escape of that. So what can you do as a hotelier or as a general citizen is make sure that none of the water escapes into the atmosphere. That doesn't have to escape. So a lot of use of grey water. Green walls are fabulous. We've got a beautiful example in London. Red Carnation have got a beautiful green wall. Green your roofs, and plant wherever you can, obviously. How do you manage the carbon emissions when it comes to your own carbon footprint? Obviously, we as citizens have a carbon footprint, which is always said to be 2,000 tons per person per year. But when you start calculating, all of us in the Western world are way above that. Most companies obviously way above that. It is worthwhile mentioning here that the tourism industry is responsible for about 8% of global CO2 emissions, of which 20% of those 8 are attributed directly to hotels. That does not include their supply chains. So what can we do in order to be carbon neutral, which is what a lot of airlines are doing, is you invest in offsetting projects, not necessarily the cleanest options, because you're just shoving your responsibility in the other way. What we recommend is that you start integrating carbon offsetting also into your own businesses if you can. There are beautiful ways by doing this. Some destinations in the Caribbean, for example, are replanting mangroves. They're a huge carbon sink. Generally, reforestation programs, afforestation programs. We've also got one of our clients, I hope you're listening, Nikita, on coral reef restorations. They're a huge carbon sink. Any programs you can participate in there are fabulous. So we are encouraging a lot of our hotels to work with local organizations that look after environments or restore environments which can help you be CO2 or carbon neutral, as it were. Energy consumption, I just mentioned it, energy consumption at hotels, at your property, at your own home is a huge CO2 contributor, but it also is a huge cost contributor. So being efficient with energy is obviously a huge bonus, both for costs and for CO2. We've given you here an example of what a hotel has achieved in 1 year by just looking at their consumption. We have a system Conserve, it's called, which measures all of these metrics here, and we can compare this savings also to things that will relate to you, so you understand how many light bulbs you might be powering just by saving that, or water in showers. So the key thing is to remember that every little bit we do, being it switching off lights, closing the fridge, taking the elevator, or walking rather than taking the elevator, making sure you don't open the window when the heating is on, and vice versa with the air conditioning. Every little thing we do and every little thing we get our staff to do makes a huge difference. Food waste is the other huge CO2 contributor. If food waste were a country, it would be the third biggest contributor to global CO2 emissions. Now that's massive. So not only, again, do we save costs if we don't have food waste, but we are also reducing CO2 emissions. So there are 4 things we honed in here. One is the anaerobic digestion, which is obviously a great process whereby out of food waste you can make fertilizers. A lot of waste companies are offering this now, but obviously you need to have separated your food waste. Compostable is something that is an object capable of being decomposed back into natural matter. These things need to be certified compostable, so you have to have a certification on that. Biodegradable is that breaks down over time by natural process, and then zero waste is obviously the goal you should have, that nothing ends up in landfill from your waste, so that you separate it also properly. Procurement, that goes also when you have a good procurement policy, you can also create less waste by buying less products and being more careful about how you buy. It is key to any hotel's environmental policy, because you can reduce your impact hugely through your supply chain, and also because the products being used at a hotel are so manifold. You have from garments and bathrobes or towels or sheets, to bathroom amenities, to food and beverage, to cleaning products. So again, looking at each and one of those and building relationship with your suppliers to make sure they are on the same journey as you are when it comes to sustainability, supporting them, saying we are with you if you're making changes, and sticking to that relationship also helps build those. You can obviously then check which of the eco labels you want to make sure that a lot of your products have. Each of them cover a different topic. Soil association looks very much at organic matter. You have the FSC, which is the paper making sure your forests are properly run. Fair trade is the payment to your producers, or then you have the certified sustainable seafood one. So there's quite a lot of certifications out there, but when you're making a policy, you can say how many you'd like to integrate, and maybe then up the game as you go along. And these help you as guidelines. Obviously, there's also certifications for hotels themselves to show what they're doing. Again, this is a little bit like an EMS system. It helps you cover all those topics that I mentioned before, because a lot of these certifications will cover these different topics when it comes to energy, or when it comes to waste and everything. So they can give you a pretty good guideline. There are quite a few out there. These are the ones that we've picked are the key and the best ones. We are going to be doing another webinar on this, so anybody interested, in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to be diving into this, and we also have a toolkit. So let us know if you have more interest on that. Governance, HR governance, really important is your staff. How you look after them, how you involve them, how you report on their well-being, the diversity amongst them, that there are no grey zones like the Modern Slavery Act, etc. in the UK, so that you really make sure there is fair trade or fair payment, and also that the other services that you're outsourcing have the same sort of rules as you do with this. Reporting, again, that goes back to the transparency. We like to report by the UN Sustainable Development Goals because we think they're a very beautiful system that the UN launched in 2015. It's being spoken by most of the global companies now that embrace sustainability and ESG. So we're all reporting on the same topics that we're looking after. My colleague Isaac is going to be doing a webinar in exactly 2 weeks from now on this, diving into specifically those SDGs that affect us in tourism. So if you're interested, please join us in 2 weeks' time. Here are just some of the companies that we are working with. And so if you want to hear more about our work, you can also contact them. As I mentioned before, Mustique, there is a very beautiful video about their coral reef restoration on their website, mustique.com, just to show you the kind of beautiful things that can be done to preserve the environment. And if you want to learn more, we've got, as I said, the Jargon Buster that we have a much more detailed one. Contact us, it involves some of these topics. And then we will be doing more webinars. So I just mentioned the SDG, I mentioned the responsible purchasing one. We're also going to be doing one on certifications, legislations, and then we've got other issues around biodiversity, plastic waste, energy efficiency. So I hope this has been informative. I hope it's been short and snappy, as I said it should be. If anybody's got any questions, I'm just looking into this now. Yes, we're happy to share this PowerPoint from this webinar. Patrick, you've raised your hand. If you put your question into the Q&A box, then I can answer it. I love the short and thank you, Patrick. That's very kind. No questions. As I said, it was quite superficial. We just wanted to sort of give the key issues, and if anybody wants more detailed support, let us know. The toolkits that we have are obviously freely available for our members and our advisory clients, Conserve clients. They do get a discount, and anybody else, let us know. We've got special offers going for this time where you can get 3 toolkits for the price of 2. So get in touch. And yes, we're always happy to share information with students because students need access to all of this. So here's our email address. You've also got us on LinkedIn, hopefully, if you want to send us any more questions. Liane, maybe you send me an email and then we can share this presentation with you so you can use it for your students if you want to, and we can see if we can help you in another way for your college. If you check here on the slide, you see info@considerate group, and we can then reply to you.